born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Yeah, the bonnie boat was one as we sailed into the mystic.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. How you doing?
Good.
Oh, I can now hear the sailors cry.
Little Van Morrison with the
Smell the sea and
Man the
feel
man.
sky. Let your soul.
All right, guys. So, hey, March Madness is here. Happy Friday, everybody. Man, welcome to Manufacturing E-Commerce Success. What an honor. What a privilege. Not only is it March Madness, it's St. Patrick's Day. Man, we're flying the green today. And boy, you talk about luck of the Irish. I have, man, Nicole, I might have to call 911, check my heart here for a second. So I have, Damon's not here with us. So guys, when you're here, you know, drop us a note. Let us know you're out there. But Damon is traveling with his wonderful, amazing, beautiful wife today. And so I have none other than the one, the only Nicole Donnelly. Nicole is my co-host. Happy Friday to you, Nicole.
Happy Friday. It is an awesome Friday. It's St. Patrick's Day. And I am a married Donnelly. So I have to like do my husband proud and, you know, represent the Irish here today. So I'm so excited.
Well, hey, happy Friday, guys. Let us know that you're out there. Drop us a note. And so what a glorious, amazing day. We have my dear friend, man. I'm just so inspired, and that word is just so fitting today. Tony Martignetti. Tony, how are you, dude? You're coming to us live from Boston, of all places, right?
Yeah, where the streets are running green today. So yeah, you can't get much more Irish than Martignetti.
Well, all right. So, guys, I want to give you an introduction. So, Tony is a high-level, high-achieving coach for just these super uber ultra successful folks. And so great career. We're going to dig into you. My goodness, you know, Gillette, Genzyme, you've had a great, career path in different medical firms. And we're going to dig into that today, Tony. You're a leadership coach. You've written a book. You have a incredible podcast. One of the nicest guys on the planet. I've had the honor and privilege to spend a great weekend with you, man. It was life-changing. But before we dig into all that, Tony, I have a question for you to kick off the program. Little question for you, my friend. Tony, when you were a little boy growing up, who was your hero? Who was your hero as a little boy growing up that just created this wonderful, amazing man that we're here with today?
Oh my gosh. I love that question. Well, I have to be honest. Indiana Jones was the man. I wanted to be him. I wanted to be like swinging from vines and, you know, kind of like discovering lost treasure and doing all those adventures. That's all I wanted to be.
Dude, were you the Last Crusade? Was that your favorite movie? Which one was your favorite?
Oh, you know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
man,
the first one.
Harrison Ford, he's knocking the tarantulas off his shoulder. Man, what a great move. You know what? First time we've had that answer. So, guys, thanks for joining us today. We have my dear friend Val. Val, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hi,
We've got, hey, how about our fellow partner here, Darcy? Happy St. Patrick's Day, Darcy. We've got my buddy Adam Baker, dude. Happy St. Patty's Day. Whitney's in the house. So, again, drop us a note. Let us know that you're here. We're here with my dear friend Tony, high-level leadership coach. We have some really exciting topics that we're going to cover. Tony, you have a new book coming out, I believe. We're going to dig into that. Have your podcast. You are just an inspiration all around. Before we get into that, I want to go back to like early days as you started off your career. I mentioned some of the high-level Fortune 500 companies that you've worked at. But dude, what'd you do last summer? Did you do anything like climb any heights? What did you do last summer by any chance?
Yeah, it was a little thing, just a little thing. I was found myself at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Kilimanjaro. Kathmandu, Kilimanjaro.
All right. Curious minds want to know. So you are an adventurer, mountain climber. Share a little bit of like this bug that hit you, but share with us. Boy, you and I were together in person last month. Had a great time just learning about your path. Talk about your Kilimanjaro adventure and like a little bit on like how did you get into mountain climbing?
Yeah. And I think the starting point of my interest in climbing came from a very young age. Reading the books about people like, Edmund Hillary and these people who were doing these adventures. And I was like, wow, what is it like to be kind of exploring these places for the first time and climb to these heights? That always that planted a seed in me that never went away. But then as I became older, I was like, well, now I have this chance to actually do some of this. My first foray is something I describe in my book, Climbing the Right Mountain, which again, there's no surprise. That's why I call the first book that I put out that title. But there's a story in the book about climbing my first mountain, which was Mount Washington here in locally where I live. I live in the Boston area, but Washington is in New Hampshire. And it was a failed attempt. Unprepared. We were in the middle of August. You'd think it'd be nice and warm, but it was snowing at the top of the mountain. So there was a failed attempt at climbing a mountain. And then later on in life, I continued to find ways to do more and more hikes, and eventually evolved to this place of, here I am. I'm going to make this mountain happen. So.
Well, that is awesome. So, hey guys, again, we're here with Tony. You want to connect with Tony on LinkedIn. I've dropped his website into the chat box there. I've dropped his book, and it is an incredible book. I just purchased it. So, so talk Kilimanjaro, man. Just, you shared that story with me. Just, let's scratch the surface. Just share a little bit, how'd that come on your radar? How did, just share a little bit about that adventure last summer.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me was that, I published the book, Climbing the Right Mountain. And then what happened was I was sitting with a few thought leaders and, my coach, Dory Clark, and she basically said something to me. She said, "What's the next mountain?" And I'm like, and the first thing that popped in my mind was Kilimanjaro. I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro, and had not made any plans. And it basically just, as soon as it was put out into the world, it became something that I was putting steps into the world to create. And a year later, I found myself there. And so that's how it came to be. But there were all these steps moving up to that, which were, during the pandemic, I had climbed, I was in Machu Picchu. So I spent some time in Peru, climbing there and being in the altitudes, which the biggest challenge of climbing is altitude. Dealing with the oxygen that, you don't have as much oxygen as you have it at the sea level, which is where I'm located. So there's a mental aspect that you deal with. And I think the biggest part of this climb was the preparation and the excitement that leads up to it.
Interesting. Wow. It's all about the journey, right? Wow.
100%.
Very cool. So tell me, I'm so curious, what mountains have you climbed?
I've climbed a few mountains in New Hampshire. I'm sorry, in New Hampshire, and then in Europe, in the Alps. So I've done some climbs in the Alps, and then in South America, I've done a few mountains down in South America. I have done very few mountains out west, which that's on my bucket list to hit some of the ones in Seattle and in Washington State and in Oregon. So.
Yep. Awesome. So Tony, so let's go here. So I just want to give everybody a little background again, guys. Happy Friday. Happy St. Patrick's Day if you're joining us. Hey, we've got Joyce here, my buddy Joyce, and she's with Women in Manufacturing. Anybody out there wants to join Women in Manufacturing, you want to reach out to our friend Joyce. She's in Colorado. And, great. You might want to connect with Joyce, Tony, and go out and get some mountains out that way. But also, let's go, I want to get in a little bit of your background, corporate warrior. You did some amazing things. I mentioned some of the high-level companies that you've worked with. And if I'm not mistaken, 2018, you take that entrepreneurial leap. Just share a little bit of your corporate background, where you found your superpowers, and then I want to transition into when you took that leap and now really into how you're helping folks as a coach.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And there's a sense of, what was the thing that really got me on this path of doing the work I'm doing now, which continues to evolve. But I'll just get into what was I doing before? What was I doing before? Well, I spent most of my career working not just in biotech, but that was a big part of my life, but working in high tech and in other industries. And the work was basically around working in finance roles and in strategy roles, and helping these companies by enabling the the companies to do what they need to do. Like, for example, when I was in biotech, it was all about ensuring that these patients got what they needed. And that was always the driving force for everything. It was all about the patient is at the end of the line of what we're trying to create. And so that was always driving me forward. But one of the things that I realized along the way is that people would come to me and say, there's something different about you. There's something about how you show up, which is not just about being analytical or being a finance person. It's about really seeing that there's people at the end, that are part of the story. Yeah. And I always used to ignore that, those insights, so that feedback. And I would just continue to move on and say, I am climbing this mountain. This is who I am. This is where I'm headed. Until I started to really listen, then I started to see that there was more to me than I was allowing. I got myself out of what I call the box, because I was constricting myself into this box of, I need to be this person. I need to show up this way. And when I let go of all of that, I started to see, oh my gosh, there's so much more I can be if I allow myself be that person. So
yeah, that's awesome. And so, guys, again, today we're here with Tony, and Tony's a master of how to effectively navigate change. So, Tony, high level finance, and you shared with me, like, man, I was climbing that corporate ladder. Like, you were very goal focused, and you were just hitting the ball out of the park climbing. 2008, you decided now you're a chief inspiration officer. I love that title. God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
Purpose inspired coaching. So, like, was there an aha moment? Like, what event occurred where you're like, or was it a gradual, like, hey, I see this entrepreneurial path coming my way? What was that transition there? And then we're going to dig into like what you do. And dude, you put out some great articles this past week. And so Nicole and I have some questions that we're going to dig into, but talk about that 2008 transition.
2018. So
2018. Thank you.
Yeah, it feels like 2008.
Yeah. With COVID, it was like 100 years ago. But yeah, 2018. What was that transition? Gradual? Was it a rip off the Band-Aid? What'd that look like?
Yeah, it's kind of a situation of slow then fast. There was two big moments that really revealed who I was supposed to be in that moment, and I think of it as these moments of flashpoints, which I'll talk about that maybe later. Flashpoints, these points of revealing who you are. And for me, the first flashpoint that I'll talk about here is this sense of just burning myself out to the point where I lost sense of who I was. Yeah. I was so burnt out that I kind of didn't know who I was any longer. And I was just showing up to work and just going through the motions. And I was serving a goal that wasn't really mine. And so it got to the point where I was at one of my darkest points. And I had to figure out, well, what am I holding on for? And that's where I had to realize, well, I had to be there for my family. I had to do something differently. Because if I don't do something differently, then something's bad's going to happen. So that dark moment was what I needed to experience. I should say not everyone needs to experience it, but I needed to experience it because it made me wake up and say, there's another way to go. There's another way to go through life. And I have a lot to give that I'm not giving right now. And so I came out of that slowly but surely. And then the big moment, the fast moment, was when I was sitting in a boardroom at a biotech company and realizing that the people I was sitting with, they, were not doing things for the right reasons. There were some leaders in the room who were all about image preservation. They were just worried about how am I looking? Am I right? Can I make sure that people see me as the person who's the leader in the room, as opposed to how can I inspire? How can I own the problems that I'm causing? And that's what really got me waking up fully, which is to say that as I looked around the room, I said, I've had enough. I think I've got to do something different. And I decided to walk out of that room.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that is bold. That's amazing.
It was a moment that I had no plan. I didn't really know how I was going to do it, but I said to myself that I'm going to leave that room to change that room. And I don't know how it will be, but I need to figure out a way to change the way leaders show up, especially in the industry that I was in at the time, considering the fact that we were saving lives and we can't be wasting lives in the process.
Okay. Tony, on our little show, we call these like drop the mic moments. Like, dude, that was just a massive. And so again, guys, you're out there, drop us a note. Let us know. I saw Whitney's here. Hey, our buddy John Baglino, he's in Jersey. So John, thank you for joining us. Nicole, I love what you just clarified. And guys, I dropped Tony's website and his book in the chat box. Absolutely want to check out Tony. On your website, you have these three things, and you just said it, Nicole. Quest for clarity, the leader's journey, and bold expectations.
Expedition.
I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing. Bold expedition. And what a bold expedition on, like, you know, and you shared this story with me, and you have a family and, like, you know, this wonderful corporate umbrella that you fall under, and like to rip that off and like jump in, like, entrepreneurship is not easy. I mean, that was a big leap of faith for you to take that.
Yeah, I mean, I have just a question around that is, what were the small, I guess, you went through this real self-discovery, right? Like, and I think a lot of people experience maybe similar flashpoints that you do, but maybe aren't ready or don't know. So like, what would you advise to people who are like maybe feeling some of that same point of burnout that you were, and are really like trying to self-discover, but maybe might be feeling confused or not sure? Like, what did you do, and what would you advise them to say, like, here's what I did to help me get to the point where I could make that bold move. Here are the things that I intentionally did to get me there.
Yeah. And I think the starting point, I love the question, because I think there's a sense of like, people hear the story and they say, like, do I have to do that too? Do I have to, walk out of the room and, kind of like give the middle finger to the rest of the people in the room? No, it's like, I actually don't advise that. Definitely not the middle finger. But I think it's more about once you have that moment in your mind, there's, this curiosity is a starting point. Curiosity is an internal move, and you start saying, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I having this constant struggle with who I am and the world around me? And what has to change for things to get better? So once you have that moment, then pause and start to think, okay, how can I get expansive and think differently about what's possible? And who can I talk to? Who are the people around me who I can have a conversation with? It might be that I just simply need to change the way I look at my current role, and have a what I call a moment of courage around the conversations that I need to have in the workplace. And that could change everything, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be that you need to start planting seeds around the future of where you want to go. And that could be like the little things that you do on the side that start planting seeds for future endeavors. It doesn't have to be, throw it all away and move on. The one thing that really happens when people start to do those bold moves is they could do something that they might regret.
Yeah. You know what I love you said? You said to be curious, to spend some time with yourself and be curious. I think that's so smart, because it's going to be a different journey for everyone, and you have to self-discover it. So I think that's really inspiring. Like, be curious about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and act on what you're like, kind of like coach yourself through it almost.
Yeah. And I'll just kind of riff on that for a moment to say, first of all, my tagline for my business, which is, I don't really share it too broadly, but the idea is that inspiration through honest conversation. And the first honest conversation you have is with yourself. If you're not being honest and having those conversations that need to be had around, like, what do I really want to experience in life? What do I define as success? And not what does the society say that success should look like? Those things have to be explored, and not just once, but many times. So when you have that honest conversation, it allows you to kind of get clarity around, okay, the things I'm doing are not really aligned with that. And what are some steps I can take to make that more aligned? My whole journey, once I left that boardroom, was all about, like, now what? I had to figure out things that I was not really being honest with myself.
Right. All right. So, Tony, I want to jump into this real quick. And hey, guys, and again, we got a couple of great comments here. So, Daniel, thank you for stopping by. Our dear friend Darcy sending love. Self-reflection is a new superpower. Tony, I want to hit this. You dropped a great, I think you just dropped it today. And it was So we talked to a lot of we're preaching to a lot of manufacturers, solopreneurs, solo marketers out there. And so again, like, being bold, courageous, having these honest conversations. Nicole and I we've been just chomping on the bit all week to talk to you about. You put out an article about conflict, but I want to hit you. You had a great article. Are your people being pulled by a rope or pushed by a sail? And you had like 3 points, man. And I just can we hit that article right now? I thought that was just such a powerful piece that you put out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we have these two different types of motivation that are out there, extrinsic versus intrinsic, and what we want to do is really tap into how are we really connecting with people, and how do we ensure that we're understanding what people want, and we want to tap into the things that are going to move them in the direction of wanting to be there and to connect with the things that are most internally motivating, not just saying, okay, well, here's more money. Here's the thing that's going to drive you to that next place. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so important to get clear about what it is that people want. And it starts with that deeper connection. We have to connect with our people, get to know them, understand their needs and desires. And it doesn't take a lot of work. It just takes a little bit of slowing down and getting clear.
Yeah, I love that. And you talk about with the intrinsic and the extrinsic. Am I saying that? Like the personal values, compared to the rewards in that article. And guys, if you check out Tony's, go to Tony's LinkedIn profile, and you'll see that post. It's a great article he just put out today. And you're talking about the balance with the rewards. Obviously we need compensation or what have you, with personal values and along those lines. Nicole, I know you're chomping. You want to dig right into like the conflict. You have some great questions you want to ask. Hey, real quick, we've got Diane Byer here today. Diane, happy Friday, happy St. Patrick's Day, my friend. So thank you. I want to read that real quick. Not being honest with self is not standing within your own authenticity. Thank you for dropping that comment. Thank you for joining us. Nicole, conflict resolution. Let's go there.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Questions for Tony today.
I've been so excited about this. Tony, this is like, I'm like so passionate about all things leadership, culture, like huge fan. I don't know if you ever read this book by Daniel Coyle, The Culture. Like one of my favorites. But I just have questions for you about conflict. I saw your post earlier this week about how conflict is really an essential part of strong cultures. And I think it's just part of business. And I think there's maybe this stigma that if you disagree with someone, that somehow that's like a bad thing or it's a negative thing. But my question is like, how can you identify and become aware of conflict that is like the good kind of like productive task, project oriented type conflict versus the conflict that's maybe more personal, relational? Like, what would you advise? Like, how do you know the difference? How do you know whether the conflict you're having is healthy versus not healthy? That's my first question for you.
It's a great question. And I think part of this is it comes down to how it's directed. There's a sense of like healthy conflict is usually separated from people, and it's more directed at the problem you're trying to solve. Okay. When I'm coaching with people, I often say, you separate the people from the problem and you focus on the problem. It's like there's when you're in conflict about solving an issue, then what happens is it's not about like, hey, I disagree with you. I think what you're wrong. It's more about, hey, this idea you have is I like it, but here's what I'm seeing about this particular problem we're trying to solve that could be different. And it's like building on that. There's a separation in the way the language is being used, is that it's approaching the problem, not the person. And that separation is so important.
That is awesome.
That's drop the mic moment number 2 right there. At least number 2, Tony. There might have been more, but I'm on a record saying John Buglino. That's at least number 2 right there. So Nicole, keep it going. I just keep
Well, what would you like as leaders? What are some things that you would advise? Like, how can you model healthy conflict to team members? Because I think it's important for team members to see good conflict so that they normalize it, but see it in a good way. What do you recommend there?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can catalyze it by just asking them to think, what are some other ways of looking at this? And saying, there's an old model from Edward de Bono called the thinking hats, which is really literally asking people to take on a different hat of what's a way that a certain other viewpoint would approach this problem. And using that thinking model helps you to say, this is not just a one and done. We're not just done with just looking at the problem from one angle, but if we take another hat and put it on, who wants to challenge this idea from that angle? It's literally asking people to insert an opinion on something, because if they're feeling too comfortable or too afraid to say that, then it gives them the license to do so.
I love the thinking hat is a super cool way to think. And it shows a lot of empathy. It teaches the team empathy. Like, let's look at this from this other perspective. Let's get out of our own heads and let's see, that's cool. This is awesome. Kurt, thanks for having me co-host this show. I'm in heaven. I'm like seriously in heaven right now. This is amazing.
But, I won't, with Damon, I won't bring up the Lou Gehrig story. So Tony, that I'm just teasing Damon, right? The Wally Pip. If you're a baseball fan, you know that story. But hey, we've got a great chat going on here. I see Donica's here today. So Donica, thank you for joining us here. And so, be honest with yourself. Darcy's dropping comments. So again, guys, connect with Tony on LinkedIn. Check out his website. You absolutely want to buy his book. Tony, let's keep it going. Okay. So you have a lot of corporate experience. We're dealing with small family businesses. Boy, yeah. I don't know. So Nicole, how about this one? Nicole, is there emotion that goes on in family business? I don't know. Is that a bad question? I'm just teasing. Lots of emotion with different generations, Tony, maybe siblings, mom and dad and son. Yeah. So let's go there. When you're working with a small, intimate family operation, 30, 40 person manufacturer, and it's not if there's going to be conflict, there is unfortunately conflict. Yeah. How, any suggestions, I'm being kind of broad, but any suggestions, advice on how that small environment, and especially when there, families involved, how would you approach that?
Well, I love this because first of all, I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you, but I actually am part of a family business as well. My father started a business many years ago, and he passed away. Both my mother and father passed away, and my brother or sister and I manage a little small business together. Mm-hmm. This is my side gig. Yep. So I'm intimately aware of the challenges that go along with that. So talk about conflict. I think
we'll leave them out of the conversation. Tony, it's safe.
You just can't escape it, right? It's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I think that the key thing is you have to, first of all, remember that there's trust first. You have to start with trust and have that sense of we're here for a reason. We're here to accomplish something big together. And we have to remember that we're family first, right? Family first, business second. And the business cannot be in conflict with our family relationship. And I know that's easier said than done, but you start with that sense of trust. Once you have that foundation, I come back to oftentimes the 5 dysfunctions of a team from Patrick Lencioni, which is trust is the bottom of the pyramid. If you don't get that started, then you're not going to get anywhere further than that. You have to have that first, but then you have to realize that we can't always agree. Otherwise, we're not going to get the best ideas to the table. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to disagree in a healthy manner and have a very clear idea as to who's accountable to what. So those are things that are important in a family business. Is if you just feel I'll expect someone else is going to cover that, then that's not going to work. What happens is nobody owns it. So then you have this kind of falling down of the whole business. It starts crumbling because people don't own it. So you need to be very clear about the roles, defining the roles of who's doing what, and hold people accountable to those roles. And that's the business part of it. And so the conflict is important, and it's got to be healthy. The trust is even more important. Mm-hmm. And then the roles, and all of that is wrapped up in a very huge container of communication, which I don't think that any business can run well without good communication. I'd rather over communication than under communication any day.
Right. Yeah. So, I love what you said about trust, because if you have a place of safety, if you start with trust and safety, like you mentioned, then conflict will come. because people feel safe to share and disagree,
Exactly.
you know? So, and it's not going to be this taboo thing because you have that layer of safety below you. That's, you know, that no matter what happens, that your team's got your back and they're not going to abandon you or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's slide here, Tony. So again, we talked to a lot of small manufacturers, and so digital transformation is a huge buzz, right? And that fits right in your alley. And so navigating change, dude, you are the master of helping folks navigate change. So let's take that small family business, 20, 30 employees, whatever, and there needs to be a change. Maybe they need a new ERP system. Maybe, lead flow's not coming in. And so now this whole online marketing thing is new to them. How do you help smaller companies, entrepreneurs navigate change, making these tough, intimidating, overwhelming decisions and to communicate that? How do you pull that piece together?
Well, I'll start with the big picture, and I'll move down.
Perfect.
And I'm going to reference the philosopher Ken Wilber. He uses the idea of transcending and including. So anything that you're stepping into, you have to include the past, and that's really honoring the past. So whenever you're moving into something new, a digital transformation or anything new business or any reorg that you're going to be doing, you have to make sure you look back and say, what do we want to include as we move forward that makes us who we are? What makes us who we are? There's a through line of any business that has to stay somewhat the same. Now, knowing that and honoring that is going to be brought into this new world, and say it's a digital transformation. You're going to be basically thinking about how can we include that part that makes us into that new platform. But we have to also make sure that as we bring new people in, and the people who have been there for a longer period of time, that we have these conversations that come together and say, what have you learned, and what are you bringing? What can I unlearn as I move into this new part of the digital world, if you will?
Okay. That's, you know what? I don't know if I've ever done this ever in the show. I'm actually putting a comment in. I typed a comment in. I put honor the past. I like that's that. All right. Nicole, Tony, we also have these things called moments of silence on the program. And on our moments of silence, it's just like, dude, like you're just dropping like major bombs here. Honor the past. It doesn't need we don't need to mock the past. And I think that's very common, Nicole, especially consultants, we come in and it's very typical. It's very easy, and forgive me on this word, it's like kind of mock of like, oh, this is how we've done it, or this is how we've always done it. And I love what you're saying, because what that does, Tony, is that disrespects the past, and it disrespects how we built this wonderful company. Right. I mean, is that
exactly? And also keeping in mind that there's people who are connected to that past.
Yep.
That if you start saying like, oh, we gotta change where we're doing things, like that old way sucks, or pardon my language, but that old way really didn't work, and now we've got to do something new. And then you bring in new talent, and then they have this new mentality, but they don't honor that past. What happens is you have like the new and the old, and that's why there's got to be a bridge, and that's why the story has to be, how do we connect the new to the old? So that both the new and the old can see that we coexist.
right?
That is so relevant. I mean, we help clients go through digital transformation every day. And I have to tell you, this is incredibly insightful, because we struggle a lot with getting I struggle sometimes with my clients because I'm such a changed person. I'm like, come on, let's move forward. Let's just bite the bullet and do it. And everything you're saying is just like a little slice of humble pie. I'm going to be honest. I got a lot to learn here.
Yeah.
And Tony, I'm sorry, and let's flip the script real quick on like Nicole, say, okay, so we need to be mindful and respectful of the past. Tony, let me just flip it. And I apologize if I interrupt you, just real quick. So for the company that is kind of like just set in their ways, this is how we've always done it. This is how we're always, so let me take it the other extreme, right? The person that really does need a change. Okay. Yeah. How do you how do you tactfully light the fire under that person? We're dude, the ship is sinking, man. If we don't do something now, we've got to bail the water out. How do you tackle that?
Yeah. With any change effort, it's important to get some early a team together of people who are able to see that there's a need to move forward. And when you start to kind of build a team of early adopters, if you will, lack of a better term, or people who are willing to be the face of that movement, then they can help to influence and create the reasons for moving forward. If you're like a one person who's trying to drive a change and you just say, hey, I'm on it and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to be the hero of the day, nothing good comes from that. Because it's like you carry the burden, and it really is about, creating a movement. Any change is really done by a group of people, not by one person. So if you can get a movement going, then what happens is you can make a better case for that one person who's maybe a laggard, who can then be seeing like, okay, I think the writing's on the wall. There seems to be a lot of people who are aligned with this change, and I can see the reasons why we were moving in this direction. And if there's any reason why they can see to stay in this current environment, they need to voice it. Otherwise, there's going to be a consensus to move in this direction.
I absolutely love that. So, all right. Hey, we've got Gail dropping a great, connecting the new and old, very valuable. Just as it's important to learn from veterans on the shop floors of manufacturing, wisdom is so valuable. So, Gail, happy St. Patrick's Day, Gail. So my daughter's a redhead. I'm like, hey, one of her friends was like, hey, you need to wear green today. She's like, I'm a redhead. I don't need to wear green. That was her answer. So I thought I absolutely love that. So,
that's awesome.
Nicole, I think you had a great question around a quote. Did you have a question around a quote?
I do, yes.
Yeah,
so I did have a chance to read the first chapter of the book that you co-authored with Alex and Brookman, right? I hope
Brookman.
Yeah. And there's a quote in the book that says, when a team is battle ready, they have a foundation of trust and safety. They know each other's blind spots and are ready to face whatever happens next.
Yeah.
So I would just love to hear from your perspective. You work with a lot of leaders and, a lot of successful, C-suite executives. Yeah. What do you teach those leaders? How can they create a place of safety and trust? We've talked a lot about that today, but like, what can they be doing to be battle ready and build that like safety and trust with their teams?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest parts of this, and thank you so much for bringing that up, because battle ready actually has there's a lot behind it, but there's a sense of like creating the elements of knowing that they're not going to have all the answers to everything they face, but it's about creating this sense of how can we have all the tools in place so that when the next challenges we face, we're ready to face it because we're being proactive and preparing. We're building resilience along the way, and we have this sense of humility as an advantage. There's a sense of building humility, knowing that having the answers is not what we're after. We have this ability to adjust course as we move forward. So being battle ready is just that. It's really kind of connecting to the sense of a different mindset to approaching problems as you face them. It's not about always having the answers. It's about slowing things down and saying, how can I look at this problem from a different vantage point to ensure that I'm not going to be flat-footed when it does show up.
I love that. And I as I'm thinking about that, I see like leveraging your team to help you build that, right? Like, so getting them involved in that whole process so that they're building the resilience with you, they're giving you feedback, they're proactively helping you come up with a solution so that they're like invested in the outcome.
Yes, exactly. I mean, one of the examples that I use is like, I've worked with a lot of biotech companies and, you have setbacks all the time, but, you get information in, let's say, a clinical trial failure that, the first thing comes to mind is like, okay, now what? How do you react to it? You have to have a plan in place that allows you to say, how are we going to deal with this failure? How are we going to deal with this setback? If you're not preparing yourself in advance to be able to bounce back from a setback, then the whole team starts looking to you and saying, now what? What did you do now? You have to be able to have a plan in place as to how am I going to deal with setbacks and uncertainty so that I can move forward from here from a place of humility.
Oh, so I just have a follow-up question about that. How do you create that or foster that with your team so that they don't feel afraid or uncertain, right? Because a lot of times as a leader, I feel like I've got to make sure that I'm steering the ship and protecting the team, not protecting them, but like, I don't want them to feel like they're in an unsafe place. You know what I mean? That there's, so how do you foster that with them so that they don't feel like they're taking on this huge burden? I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to.
You put on your coaching hat.
If I understand correctly, and I'll try and speak to it as best I can, but I think there's a sense of this is where it's a balancing act with everything. It's all about how you balance the sense of, not knowing and knowing. And when you walk in and you share information with your team, you want to be able to kind of give them a sense of like, there's a lot of things we don't know at this moment, but we know that we're going to figure this out. We're going to put a plan in place and we're going to do it together. It's not about saying like, oh crap, now what? And being like, feeble-minded in the moment with your team. It's about showing up with the sense of like, okay, things have happened. We don't have a clear plan yet, but we're making it. And I could use your help to be part of this so we can move forward here. That's confidence, but it's also a sense of confidence in the face of vulnerability.
I love it. And it's empowering to the team too. It's building them to be leaders. I just love that. So cool.
Let's grab a couple comments here. So Gail dropped another great one. I had a boss who told me never wanted to hear this is how we've always done it. Best mentor ever, curious minds. And she's right there, Tony, Chief Curiosity Officer. And Gail, you and Tony absolutely need to correct. You guys would just totally hit it off. Here's our dear friend Diane, battle ready, second base, plays second base, and can anticipate movements of their teammates under any circumstance thrown at the team. And we've got another comment here, just all these hearts. So Mahan, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining us. Tony, I want to slide in. So a couple of things, guys. Again, please do yourself a favor. You're just getting a little taste of just the brilliance, just the passion, wisdom of Tony. And you want to connect with Tony on LinkedIn. I dropped his website in the chat. He has a great book. It is called Climbing the Right Mountain. And Tony, I want to slide into your book. And you also have a great podcast. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your podcast. It is Virtual Campfire, the Virtual Campfire podcast. And again, you can go to your website. I dropped in the chat, and you can find Tony's podcast. But Tony, on your book, Climbing the Right Mountain, you talk about what you want, who you want to be, and how to get there. So we've been talking a lot about leadership and conflict management and conflict resolution, those types of things. Let's dig into let's go back. We're going to go full circle, and I want to be mindful of your time as well. Let's go full circle. So for the individual out there, okay, maybe like COVID threw them a change, life change, displaced in work. Maybe it was planned, unplanned, whatever it might be, but they have a burning desire to make a change in their life. Okay. Just share, let's go there for a little bit. You're coaching that person. How do you tackle that conversation? How do you kind of get them fired up and inspired? Thus the name of your whole MO is around inspiration. How do you get that person inspired to make that big leap of faith change in life?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love this question, and I'm going to kind of play with it in a different way. I'm going to say that I like to play with different terminology. I'm a metaphorologist, if you will. I'm a time traveling anthropologist is what I sometimes say, because there is a sense of digging into people and saying, okay, well, if you were to play with time for a moment in your life, like you got into this place that you're in right now for a reason. There was some things that you liked about the work you're doing. And I want you to kind of go back in time and look at what was the thing that led you here? And what are the things the values that you connected to that had you here? So go in your past and find out what led you here. And then thinking about the future, let's kind of fast forward into the future and say, who is it that you see yourself being? It's not about, attaching to any particular job, but how do you want to feel? What do you want to show up as? And think about those qualities. It's like the whole adage of if you want to be a marathon runner, you have to actually think what are the qualities of being a marathon runner? I love that vision that you set when you kind of create this persona for yourself. Just say, I am that person already. And when you have that connection of who that is, then you can start making actions in the present that are aligned with that. But I went a little fast for us here, because what I want you to realize is those are the things that I want that person to do. But before we really move into this space of doing this time traveling, I want them to first identify, what has them currently feeling like they're not in the space of feeling connected to their work. So that's the first thing I would really have them thinking. But time traveling is the most important step you can take in any coaching endeavors, to really have them play with time. Because if they're just staying in this current moment, not a lot's going to happen.
Yeah, and thus the name of your business, you're all about purpose and being fulfilled. How do you help somebody if they're just really struggling? How do you help somebody uncover that purpose?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that purpose is like something that can change over time, by the way. People often think it's a fixed thing, but it's not. Purpose can take on different shapes and forms. There was something I read recently about the North Star. People often think of like your purpose as your North Star. Yeah. But in reality, the North Star is actually moving. So go look that up. Technically, it's moving. So just like our North Stars sometimes they move a little bit. So to find your purpose, the key thing is to look for those clues that keep on showing up in your life. They're repeated little clues that show up. I often say that inspiration, and an inspiration is there are clues as to what your soul's purpose is. And I know I'm probably losing a whole bunch of people right now because they're thinking themselves like, I didn't know I just stepped into this wait, metaphysical space.
Dude, that was a. Please say that again.
Inspiration are the clues to your soul's purpose. And
let's just take a moment of silence there. I don't think you lost anybody, dude. That was a total drop the mic right there. Clues.
Oh. Yeah. So think about that for a second here. Like, as you go through your days, and this is something that I do a lot with people to kind of say, when you look at the week ahead, what are the things that you've planned in your calendar that are exciting for you, that are lighting you up?
Yeah.
You got to intentionally plan for inspiration. It's inspiration by design, but also inspiration shows up serendipitously too. So if you model your life that says, look, I'm just going to rinse, wash, repeat, everything's going to be exactly the same, and I'm not leaving any space open for things to show up that might, create something different, then that's going to be hard, because your life's going to continue to be the same, and you might get into a malaise, potentially burnout. But if you leave the aperture open a little bit more and you create space for inspiration, those are going to be opportunities for you to be able to connect with your purpose. Maybe it's going to an open mic night and, seeing like, hey, what if it happens if I get on stage and like sing, and I find that that's what I'm meant to be doing? Who knows?
Wow.
Okay, guys, Tony is his company is Inspired Purpose Coaching. He has a podcast. He has a book. You absolutely want to connect with Tony here. Tony, we're going to start winding down. I want to be respectful of your time as we're coming in the bottom of the hour. So as we wind down, dude, you are a music junkie. Okay, so I have a couple questions left for you real quick. And Nicole, please, I'm going to ask one, and then I'll see if Nicole, what you have left here. Tony, client calls you up and Tony, you changed my life. This was just a home run. God bless you. Thank you for everything that you did. You sit back, you hang up the phone. You're like, hey man, I'm going to celebrate with a little music. What song's going on? What song's going on as you're celebrating a win in your life?
That's a great question. I love it.
It's a fantastic question. And it was funny because I was thinking about this song this morning. I don't know why. But I love Grand Funk Railroad.
Nice.
The song "I'm Your Captain."
I'm your captain. That's a great song.
I don't even know this song.
She's too young.
I'm your captain. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those great songs because it's like a song within a song. Yeah. It's got like two songs and wrapped in one, and it's just a great song.
Okay, drop the mic. That is I love that song. If you guys don't know it, Google it, look it up. If you're over a certain age, you're probably not familiar with it, but it is that is a classic. I never saw that one coming. Nicole, I know you had any other questions before we wind down?
I don't know. I feel like my questions are too deep for this part of the conversation. I think.
Oh, come on, bring it on.
Bring it on.
Okay, I do have one question for you because I know you coach a lot of. What are some common struggles or challenges that you see across the board that leaders are dealing with that you're just like, man, I just am hearing this over and over again, and it's just like kind of like a common refrain? And how do you like advise on like what's your, how do you deal with those?
Great question.
Challenges?
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, I mean, two things for sure that I hear like repeatedly, and I'll start with the one that I think everyone is struggling with is this sense of like time management is like an ongoing battle, and how do I create space for the things that are most important? And I think it's like it's not time management, it's priority management, and knowing that you can't do it all. We're humans, for Christ's sakes. We have to be mindful of the fact that we can't get everything done, but we have to figure out what's most important in this moment. And how do we make plans to make that happen? So time management is one of the things that I spend a lot of time dealing with on that front. And the other one is around, really creating this connection with giving feedback and with really good feedback to their employees. There's been a lot of difficult conversations over the past few years, especially with people coming in and saying, I'm looking for the next move, or I'm looking to do this. And how do you have those difficult conversations? And I think the first thing that I often hear people say is that there's this anxiousness to please. They care about their people. We have to slow down and say, we're not here to please our people. We're here to serve them. And sometimes it's about making sure that they're in the right roles or even in the right company. And some of the most, the best things we can do for them is to let them go. And I don't mean that to be insensitive. I'm just saying that like sometimes like dragging someone through a process of trying to get them to stick around for the sake of like them having a job, it might be even better for them to be able to say, look, this is not a fit. And, I really want to be able to serve you well by helping you to see a better fit out is maybe someplace out there.
That's so good. Well, okay. I have two things I wanted to say. Like,
a couple comments here, Nicole, real quick. I got to share this before. This is so. Thank you, Val. This is so good, and I agree. Multiple mic drop, and so we did need to savor that for a minute. And let's see. I saw another priority management.
Yeah,
dude, Tony, like, oh my God, I had such high expectations. Like, I just want to. Nicole, please come in with your question, but please serve over please. I mean, that Tony, like you've made things like it's so simple, but it's like it's not easy. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like you're the way you're describing things, it's really simple, but it's not always easy because we want to be a pleaser, but it's like serving. Nicole, please, what question did you have there?
I was just going to say, I love that you address the time management problem with grace. Like accepting and acknowledging that you can't do it all. Because I think that is something personally I struggle with. Oh, I feel like I've got to do it all. Well, release yourself of that burden and just accept you can't do it all. And that is freeing. It's absolutely freeing to hear that. And then the other thing I just was going to, I lost my train of thought on it. It was about your second point about employees and making sure they're in the right role, but I forgot what it was.
Well, how about, so it says service to others is part of foundation. And Gail again says, I agree, letting somebody go, and I hate to say it, I've found that out the hard way. It's like sometimes, it's like, a career or a job it's like a bad relationship. And like, we feel like, well, a relationship is better than no relationship. A job is better than no job. And unfortunately, we stay and nobody's winning at that situation. So, all right, as we start winding down, Tony, I'm going to ask you I have one last question, Nicole, if you have anything else. So, guys, please do yourself a favor. Just subscribe to Tony's podcast. You just got a little sliver today of just all the wisdom, the brilliance, the inspiration that Tony drops. And like what you just saw this past hour, and if you meet Tony in person, this is Tony. Tony's one of the most authentic, genuine, kind, dude, I love you, brother. You're just such a great person. I just feel so blessed that I've crossed paths with you. But his business is Inspired Purpose Coaching. You absolutely want to check out his website. I dropped it probably 100 comments ago, so you want to make sure check out his website. But Tony, you're all about inspiration. You're all about helping people fulfill. My question, dude, you climbed Kilimanjaro last year. Mm-hmm. Who or what is your inspiration that's driving you and your success? Who or what is your inspiration today, moving forward for 2023? Who or what is your inspiration?
Oh my gosh. My inspiration really comes from this desire for deeper connection in the world. And I don't mean to be so like, out there, but the reality is that like, I am inspired by conversations in real life that are being had. And I feel like it's been missing a lot in my life because of the pandemic. And so every time I have a conversation in person, I feel like this sense of spark that like, this is what it's like to be in connection, and not just like the hi, how are you conversations, but these conversations that go deeper to understand people on another level. So that's what's inspiring me. And one of the things that's both inspiring and freaking me out is that I'm actually getting on stage this summer to give a TED Talk about deeper connection. Yeah.
That is amazing. Congratulations. You are going to do an amazing, I like literally you just brought tears to my eyes and gave me the goosebumps.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Well, me too.
I want to be in that audience. That's amazing. You're going to be
Tony,
great.
where's the TED Talk going to be? Can you share?
It's going to be in Texas and just outside of Fort Worth.
Nice.
Very
awesome.
nice.
Yeah. Okay, so Nicole, any parting before we let Tony go? Any parting thoughts, questions, comments that you want to share?
Oh, I can't follow that up with anything. Just that I think that your inspiration for connection is absolutely can echo that that's so needed in the world today. I think COVID only made it worse, and people are just desperate for it. And I think that what you're doing is just so amazing and so inspiring. There's so many people that will benefit from the gift of Tony.
The gift of Tony. So guys, if you've been, first off, I want to thank everybody out there today. Thank you for your comments. I know how busy everybody is, and it's just such an honor, blessing for us that you spend your time with us. If you've been sitting down, kind of like just enjoying, maybe you had lunch or whatever you had going on, if it's good time to stand up and stretch, and if you're going to stand up, I invite you, encourage you. How about let's give a standing ovation to our wonderful, amazing, beloved guest here, Tony Martignetti. And again, guys, check out Tony, check out his website, connect with them on LinkedIn. Diane says, hey, congrats on your TED Talk, my friend. Tony, thank you, brother. I appreciate you more than you know. And I can't let you go. Like I can't even get this thing to end. But Tony, I'm 54 years old, and Tony said something to me that literally kind of changed my life. And he's like, you know what I'm working on? I've always been, if you don't mind me sharing, Tony.
Yes, please.
I'm afraid to ask for help. And Tony, you could have knocked me over with a feather, because like that is 54 years of me and that has been a total change. And so now like I'm trying to learn, like, you know what, I can't do this whole journey alone. And so I've been blessed and partnered with Nicole and just, all sorts of amazing people in the chat here and other friends in the, group that you and I belong to. And so just what a blessing you are. Thank you for the positivity. Thank you for the inspiration. Thanking how you're just really, truly changing lives. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So guys, go out, have an amazing, incredible, phenomenal St. Patrick's Day weekend. Enjoy March Madness. Just, boy, luck of the Irish is here today with us and Tony. And so Tony, hang out with us for 1 second. We're going to wrap up the call. We're going to chat with you for a second. But guys, God bless you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.